once someone goes through the claims process, they've figured out what was there, they have the adjuster, if they're using one or working with one, or themselves, get whatever quoting they need, and now the insurance company has established the value that they're going to get for this property. Do they have to build the same thing again, or can they take that money and build something different? Can they, like you said, redesign it? What are the stipulations or options for that?
It's going to depend on your policy type. There are certain policy types that will give you a cash settlement. So if you have $1 million cottage and you have a cash settlement option, you could just take your $1 million. No depreciation, no penalty. But majority of policies don't have that clause, so you have to rebuild. You have to rebuild to what you had. Now, you can make adjustments
to fit that new budget, potentially?
To fit the new budget, potentially. That's something that you have to talk to the insurance company about. But you can make alterations. You're just going to be footing the bill for the alterations. So if you always wanted an extra like nook or bathroom or something like that, you can say, well, I want to add this in while we're rebuilding this. And the insurance company will say, okay, great. You're going to pay for that portion of it. So you can make adjustments, but you can work within your budget to make changes to potentially make you fall in line to where you want to be. To save some money if you don't have the bylaws coverage or something like that.
Is there a cap on, like, when someone has an insured value, you know, whatever, to pick a number, like might be $400,000, and that's what they're insured for. If that number is maybe outdated and they don't have the bylaws coverage, or even if they do have the bylaws coverage, but it actually just costs more because of increased construction costs to build that now, is there something in the policy or potentially that helps out with that, or are they kind of stuck with that cap number of what it says on their policy?
So again, it's going to depend on the policy type. Standard homeowners policies include guaranteed replacement costs. So if your home is insured for $400,000 and $400,000 isn't enough, and you have guaranteed replacement costs on it, most companies are going to pay 125% of the value. So your $400,000 will be multiplied by 125%, and that would be the value. Often there's also a thing called single limit on the policy. That's where you can combine your limits if there's a shortfall. So your limits for your dwelling, your personal property, your additional outbuildings, and your additional living expenses, you can group them into one total, and that can help pay for shortfalls as well. Your personal property is generally 80% of the dwelling amount is automatically assigned. So if your house is $400,000, 80% of that will be automatically assigned to personal property. So if there's a shortfall in your home, you may not have $300,000 in personal property. So you can, with single limit, you can combine your limits and help pay for that.
Or maybe
shortfall.
You don't care about that old touch that you have sitting around. That to the That's perfect. So what do you think the number one mistake is that people make with the perspective of like making sure that they're getting the most amount of value they can if unfortunately they have to put in one of these claims?
There can be different scenarios. With seasonals, often people don't value their property enough. They don't, they think, well, it's a 50-year-old cottage, it's not worth anything. Well, it's, as you would know, it costs more to construct a seasonal in the middle of the bush somewhere as it does compared to building a house in the city. So already you're starting with higher construction costs. So often when we're setting values, we have a calculator that we plug information into and it spits out a value. But there's variances to that. We can say, is your house standard construction? Is it above average? Is it fairly updated? But we're relying on the client. If the client just tells us, oh, it's old, it's dingy or whatever, just make it as low as possible. Well, that's all we have to go off of. And that can run into a problem because people think that their thing is worth nothing and then it burns down and they're short $200,000. to rebuild it. So you got to communicate with your broker. You got to tell them what you have. You got to be honest with them what you have. And you also have to look at your policy and decide, like, is this $200,000 enough to rebuild my cottage?
Yeah.
Yes, it's only 800 square foot, but it's in the middle of nowhere. Maybe you need ice roads to get to it, to construct it. Maybe they got to helicopter stuff in. Like, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But you have to think about that kind of stuff. So if standard construction is 400 square foot in the city, out there might be 600 square foot.
Exactly.
So those are all things you got to think about. And your broker should advise you on that. But we're all not equal, and we all don't know everything.
Yeah.
And there's different levels of experience. So just look at your policy, see what the value is, do some math in your head, maybe contact a guy like Glenn and say, this is what my house is insured for, or my cottage is insured for. Is that enough?
Yeah.
You gotta do your homework too.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be in a situation where you've lost it and now you can't rebuild it. Get ahead of it and make sure that you have enough coverage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Price isn't everything. I know nobody wants to pay more for insurance than they have to, but when you need to use it, you're going to be very thankful that you paid that money. Yeah.
So let's say someone's in a situation where it's already burnt down. They're getting what they're getting, whether that's undervalue, overvalue, whether they have enough or not. Is there some key steps that they should make sure they don't miss to make sure that, regardless of what their value is, that they're getting the most that they can? And I'll give you an example just to get some context for the question, because we have bid on and rebuilt different insurance projects over the past, and we've had ones that came through adjusters where a specific example where there's 3 people that quoted a project. We quoted it, one of our really close competitors quoted it, and someone I never heard of quoted it. On us and our closest competitor, we're within like a couple % of each other on the value, which was like, makes sense. But this person I never heard of was like 60% of our value, and they got the project and they were the ones rebuilding it. But knowing what the value of these things are, like, that's an impossibility for them to actually rebuild to that standard for that cost. So like in those cases, I fear like, is the homeowner just getting shortchanged there and losing out? Like, is there things, and like maybe there's other examples or situations you can think of, but is there specific things that people can do just to make sure that regardless of what happens, they're at least just getting as much value as they can from this settlement, from this claim, so they don't end up just being shortchanged at the end of it?
So in a situation like that, you're going to have to rely on the insurance company quite a bit, or the adjuster. They're going to be dictating the claim. As a broker, we can help intervene, but we are not making the decision.
Yeah, obviously.
But you have to advocate for yourself. Often insurance companies will get 3 quotes, and they don't always go with the lowest. In this situation, maybe because it was 60% lower, they thought, hey, we can save some money. But obviously, they're not going to get what the other quotes were offering. So you have to advocate for yourself. You can push back. You don't have to accept what they're offering you initially. You have to be able to prove that maybe what they're offering isn't equal to what you had before and what the other builders are offering. But you got to push back. And if you're having issues, that's where we come in. So again, we're not the decision maker, but we can help advocate on your behalf. We kind of work for both parties, right? We represent the insurance company and we represent our clients. But we spend a good portion of our day dealing with the insurance company, helping advocate for our clients. And that's sort of the best thing you can do, is just reach out to your broker if you're having issues, have your broker contact the insurance company, contact the adjuster, and say, hey, like, this isn't what I have currently. There's no way they can build it for this price. Maybe we should look at somebody else. Maybe they have to get a 4th quote to balance it out and say, this 60% one doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Now I have 3 quotes that are all in the same realm. We should go with one of these companies.
Yeah.
And insurance companies will look at that. They're not necessarily looking for the cheapest option.
Yeah.
They have to rebuild what you had of like, kind, and quality. Maybe they didn't understand what you had.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah.
So you just got to push back.
That's a good point, because I think a lot of people, you know, most people have never done this. Hopefully they've never done it.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully you're not a repeat customer on a fire burn down, right? Like, hopefully if you ever have to do it, you're only doing it once, so people don't understand the process. But yeah, knowing that just because someone comes in and says, oh, this is what we're doing, it doesn't have to be accepted. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to advocate for yourself. It's okay to make sure that this process is being done correctly. Like, you don't need to necessarily rush through it. Like, ask questions to your broker. You know, like you said, advocate for yourself. That's, you know, probably the biggest tip that people could take out of this, really.
Yeah, like a lot of times clients will think, oh, my broker doesn't have any part of this claim. I'm dealing with the insurance company. And we find out months after the claim was settled that it didn't go well for them. Like we follow up with, like us at Fast Insurance, we follow up with our clients, you know, a few days into the claim, and then we'll follow up when we get a claims closing notice or when we get updates from the adjusting company. We'll ask the questions, how's it going?
Yeah.
But sometimes clients will just tell us it's fine, or they don't get back to us. But then months later, we find out it went sideways and we could have helped them.
Yeah.
So yes, we're not the decision maker, but part of what you're paying for with dealing with a broker is someone to advocate for you. So contact your broker.
Yeah.
Ask the questions. Don't just accept anything. I mean, if you had a $5,000 bike and they're offering you $5,000, that's what it is. Right? That's an easy claim. But if you had a $500,000 cottage and they're not going to rebuild it to the same specs, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
So ask for help.
Yeah, and I think people maybe could take that one step further and be even just a little more proactive about, like, yeah, I'm going to make a claim, but just asking that question to your broker to be like, hey, like, are there some specific things I should be asking this adjuster? Is it like, do you have specific things you think I should do while we're doing this? Like, you know, sometimes we don't know what we don't know, especially in this case. So just to ask that your broker just to help you out with some questions and guide you through that, what you should be doing process. It might be a 5-minute phone call that saves you $50,000, right?
Absolutely. And there's junior people, right? You can have an adjuster that's a junior person that doesn't have that experience. Not to fault them, they're doing the best they can, but if you don't push back, they'll just think that you're okay with what they have and it'll just move forward. But if you push back a little bit, maybe they'll ask their manager or ask their coworker and they'll revisit the claim.
Do a little more research on it or something.
Like everyone's got to start out somewhere. So people make mistakes. We all make mistakes, but you just got to push back and maybe have it revisited.
Yeah. And like you mentioned before, that like they don't always have all of the information either, right? Like, they're basing it on information that they got when you set up your policy and the bit of information you gave them now. So there might be something missing on their end that they don't even realize is part of this that needs to be accounted for, right?
And your house changes, your cottage changes over the years. Maybe you missed telling us that you swapped out your laminate countertops with custom granite, or you brought in an Italian kitchen, right? You may not think to tell your broker that, and that's fine. But when there's claims coming up, we don't know that. The insurance company doesn't know that. So it's good to be proactive. Anytime you're doing a major renovation to your home or seasonal, it's good to contact your broker and say, hey, we're doing this. Does this change my value? Should I increase my value? If you're opening up any walls, if you're opening up the structure to the elements, the outside elements, let us know beforehand. There can be exclusions on your policy, so you don't want to be in a situation where you don't have coverage. But the more you keep us up to date, the more you tell us about your property, the more we can make sure your value is where it needs to be.